this is a person I respected tremendously, very, very senior person. He's told me, he said, Lou, I want you to stop doing this. I said, okay, sir, I certainly can, but may I ask why? And he says, well, we already know what it is. And I said, okay, sir, so it's ours? And he said, no, that's not what I'm saying. He asked me point blank, have you read your Bible lately? And I wasn't quite sure where he was going with that. And I said, well, sir, I think I know what it says. Where are you going with this? And he said, well, then you would know that these things are demonic and we should not be pursuing them.
So this is a Pentagon. This is a Department of Defense official saying, stop looking at UFOs because they're demonic?
Correct.
And what I've been trying to do is to use the special privilege that I've been given of getting access to a Harvard education and a law school education and with the Jesuits and all the different people and meeting, Baba Muktananda and getting to meet all the spiritual leaders of our people and our planet, is to try to develop a really intelligent, sophisticated, spiritually informed, but rationally developed set of policies for our dealing with extraterrestrial civilizations.
Both of us, separately, without communicating, we're studying this and going, wow, there is something going on here.
Right.
Since this is out, it's in Congress, and they're discussing this right now. This isn't conspiracy
Sure,
anymore.
sure. Yeah,
Something
absolutely.
weird's going on here.
Absolutely. Very eye-opening.
A pillar of fire at night and confused Russian troops. It has some asking, are Ukrainians receiving heavenly help?
There's some miracle happened. It looked like some spaceship, like there was like an attack from the spaceship. There was some kind of a lightnings was starting shooting from the sky, and like sparks were like spreading everywhere. And then on the morning they discovered that the whole machinery was destroyed.
Revelation 16 says these unclean spirits, they go and they perform signs and wonders. And Jesus warns in the Gospel of Luke, and it's repeated in the book of Acts, chapter 2, that there will be signs in the heavens. And a lot of people are going to be seeing things in the skies in the last days. The Bible says that in prophecy. So we need to know what the truth is, what to believe and what not to believe, because I think that evil spirits are going to use that to manipulate people in the last days.
If you're an alien and you want to get baptized, the Pope is in favor of it.
Pope Francis reiterated his view Monday that everyone has the right to be baptized. And apparently that invite extends even to Martians.
We've only seen the public version so far, but here's what we can tell you. Government investigators seem sincerely baffled by what these things are. Today's report analyzed 144 separate sightings of UFOs by the U.S. military, but in only a single case could the government explain what it was.
We're now less than 16 minutes away.
The strategy that Werner von Braun taught me was that first the Russians are going to be considered to be the enemy. In fact, when I met him in '74, they were the enemy, the identified enemy. We were told that they had killer satellites. We were told that they were coming to get us and control us, the dirty commies, that whole story. First, the Russians were the enemy against whom we're going to build space-based weapons. Then terrorists would be identified, and that was soon to follow. We heard a lot about terrorism. Then we were going to identify third world country crazies. We now call them nations of concern. But he said that would be the third enemy against whom we would be needing to build space-based weapons. And the next enemy was asteroids. Now at this point, he kind of chuckled the first time he said it. Asteroids, against asteroids we're going to build space-based weapons. So it was funny then. And the funniest one of all was against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials. That would be the final card And over and over and over during the 4 years that I knew him and was giving his speeches for him, he would bring up that last card. And remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens. And all of it, he said, is a lie.
14 minutes, 30 seconds and counting.
You know, there were no questions that prepared me for what I was about to get into. You know, people often say, "Oh, it must have been fun and must have been exciting." No, it was pretty sobering. You know, I liken this conversation to like having a conversation with a loved one about maybe cancer. Now, the good news is the diagnosis looks fine; you're going to recover, but it's a serious conversation. This is something that we are challenging people to reevaluate their philosophical, psychological, sociological, and theological belief system. Anytime you ask humanity to do something like that, it usually takes generations. You can't just pivot because, you know, for example, let's just take culture, for example, of a country. It's like an aircraft carrier. How long does it take to turn an aircraft carrier? Well, it takes quite a bit of time and a lot of effort and whatnot. Well, this topic is the same way because we're challenging people to reconsider, if you will, reevaluate their understanding of what they've been told about the universe and more importantly, our place in it.
These so-called alien beings are actually manifesting at times as dead relatives during the abduction experience to challenge a person's belief system as Christian theology in the idea that dead relatives can be talked to or even spoken to, or that they're even around to be able to hear what we have to say.
No evolutionary or religious belief system shows that this will end well by contacting these things. Evolution says that these things are likely to be superior, and so survival of the fittest will destroy us. Religion says that these things are deceptive and dangerous, and the evidence, if you want to include all the theory and all this, the stories that of these sincere people, it says they've damaged crops, they have mutilated cattle, they've abducted people beyond their will, they've messed with our highest security protocols, they enabled and disabled dangerous warheads, forced pregnancies, forced surgeries, burned victims, killed pilots, and lied to people. And most experiencers have experienced at least one terrifying alien experience. So to say that these things, they haven't destroyed us yet, so they must be good, is to deny the fact that there might be a universe, a court, saying these earthlings are protected here on Earth. And that's what Christianity believes.
The Defense Intelligence Agency has just released that program's 2010 report on UFOs. And among other things, the document tells us that the government can prove that UFO sightings have caused radiation burns, paralysis, and brain damage. The report also says that some people who saw UFOs experienced, quote, perceived time suspension. They also saw ghosts and other spirits. In all, that report lists 42 cases of adverse effects from medical files and another 300 adverse effects from unpublished cases, whatever that means.
We passed the 11-minute mark. Now T-minus 10 minutes, 54 seconds on our countdown.
But what they're saying to us now is it's going to affect Christian belief. There is a professor for the Pope's University in Rome, and he is a very highly respected intellectual. His last name is Tanzaniti, and he has written a paper now in which he is saying that very soon, not right in the beginning, we won't have to deny our Christian faith in the beginning, but there is information coming from another world, and once it is confirmed, it is going to require a rereading of the gospel as we know it. And that's the kind of information that we are receiving from the highest levels of Vatican intelligentsia.
Mark, T-minus 10 minutes and counting, T-minus 10.
saying about the nuclear weapons, the UFOs were turning our weapons on, and just so Russia could pick up that we're firing our missiles and fire theirs first. It was a big chess game. So these guys went into complete secrecy to start coming up with a defense system against this phenomenon.
There's footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. We can't explain how they moved, their trajectory. They did not have an easily explainable pattern. And so, I think that people still take seriously trying to investigate and figure out what that is.
There are things flying around up there that we haven't fully identified yet. And keep in mind, there are basically 1 billion galaxies in an ever-expanding universe. I mean, you can't even get your mind around the sheer number of things that are out there.
But you've seen this.
And
you've seen the data.
Well, no one knows, but I think that the probability is that there's something you would call life somewhere else.
The mission of ATIP was quite simple. It was to collect and analyze information involving anomalous aerial vehicles. What I guess in the vernacular you call them UFOs. We call them UAPs.
You know how this sounds. It sounds nutty, wacky.
Look, Bill, I'm not telling you that it doesn't sound wacky. What I'm telling you, it's real. The question is, what is it? What are its intentions? What are its capabilities?
They told me that the reason why we're an experiment is because we, right now, are a living, breathing, walking, talking peace treaty.
My name is Tom DeLong. Most people know me as the founder of the popular rock and roll band called Blink-182. I started a company called To The Stars that eventually became To The Stars Academy of Arts and Science. We are literally the group that is responsible for why you read about UFOs in the papers today without all the stigma. It's the first time that we had the videos properly declassified. And because of that, then we had information as far as altitude and speed, eyes on target, different radar systems, different sensors that all corroborated what was happening.
When people start to understand more about the UFO phenomenon, and when they follow what Secret Machines is going to teach them, and mind you, as we'll talk about this in a little bit, it's not all coming from me, it's coming from other people of the highest places. The term the occult in that whole world is much more a part of the UFO phenomenon than, and that's part of what makes it more complex than just little green men and flying saucers and tinfoil hats. There's a very, very strong link between what people think demons are from the Bible and other religions and the UFO phenomenon. And what you have is something that doesn't like man, period, and something that feels either jealous of or has some kind of plan for what man is to be.
Over the next 10 years, I have now worked with over 400 cases of people that have been able to stop the abduction experience in the name and authority of Jesus Christ. This is documented evidence.
But what they're saying to us now is it's going to affect Christian belief. Very soon, Not right in the beginning. We won't have to deny our Christian faith in the beginning. But there is information coming from another world, and once it is confirmed, it is going to require a rereading of the gospel as we know it. And that's the kind of information that we are receiving from the highest levels of Vatican intelligentsia.
We're now passing the 4-minute 30-second mark in the countdown. Still go at this time.
And the priest told us, could I have a little bit more? Your time I want to do something very fascinating. He says the grain plain, the master's grain plain, for harvesting the nations, for harvesting the multitudes of the earth into his cause, just before the close of the great controversy between the forces of good and evil. So we continued, after we expressed ourselves that we're deeply interested to know more about the activities of spirits. And he said it's going to be done in a unique manner. This grain plain is going to take people are going to eat the stuff. Because it says spirits, demon spirits, will declare themselves to be inhabitants of far distant planets in the galaxies that are coming to warn the inhabitants of planet Earth of the impending destruction of the planet unless something seriously proper is done to avoid it.
T-minus 3 minutes and counting. T-minus 3. We are go with all elements of the mission at this time. Just past the 2-minute mark in the countdown. T-minus 1 minute, 54 seconds and counting. All indications coming in to the control center at this time indicate we are go. Guidance system goes on internal at 17 seconds, leading up to the ignition sequence at 8.9 seconds. T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus 60.
Mysteries to the universe we were never meant to solve. But who we are and why we are here are not among them.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well,
Welcome back to Strange Normal. My name is Brad Burnham. We talk about the stranger things that happen in your normal life to give you a biblical understanding of what's going on. And there's going to be a lot going on, so hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell icon so you're notified when things like this happen. Now, tonight's episode is very interesting. We've got a lot going on tonight, and we just reached the tip of the iceberg because we got a lot packed into this entire week. But all that happened on our Discord server. And you can access that by going to patreon.com/strangenormal. In that Patreon, we talk about everything that we're going to talk about on the show and more. For the cost of a simple sit-down restaurant once a month, you can be involved in this community and helping spread the word about this coming deception. If you don't know what that deception is, watch starfallmovie.com. Go to starfallmovie.com to see that documentary now. Welcome back, man. We're going to have an amazing show tonight. I hope we don't go too long because we got a lot packed in here and we're going to have some very interesting topics to talk about. But before we get into that, come on in. How are you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing good, Brad. How are you doing?
Good. How's the wife?
Wife's good.
Good. How's the thing that you're not supposed to talk about?
How's the prune? The prune's good. Actually, we went and had a ultrasound, 10-week ultrasound taken today. You want to see it? Do you want me to show it to you?
Show it, yeah.
It's really cool. Let me see if I can try to pull this up here because I have a picture. Oh, it's super awesome. So let's see. If this works, then we'll treat the people today. All right, 3, 2, 1.
Boom.
Wow.
Look
at the little baby.
My goodness. Wow.
Look at that thing wiggle
How many
around.
weeks is that?
It's 10.
Oh, man. That's amazing. And it's moving around in there. Technology is so amazing. That's just amazing.
Isn't that crazy?
It's something. That is something.
Hopping around.
Well,
So the consensus is all that hyperactivity means it's a boy. That's what everyone in my family is saying. So here we go. Put your helmet on.
Parallax Jr. All right. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, we got, if you haven't seen the list yet, I always put the list in Discord.
Oh
and
yeah.
man,
That's a big one.
You're
doing some fishing.
Yeah, this Bigelow thing is such a rabbit hole, but it's a good rabbit hole because we can actually find a lot of information legitimately from what's going on here, and we can kind of pull out the spiritualness of it because he talks a lot about the spiritualness of it. It's really interesting as we go down through the show. But first, before we get into that, here's kind of what we're going to talk about tonight. Bigelow is going to be our big story. We're going to talk a little bit about him, Robert Bigelow. You want to look into him, go to his Wikipedia page and figure out who he is. If you don't already know, a lot of you old timers that have been into this for a while, you're going to know about this. This show, if you are an old timer looking at this, we are looking at this from a different aspect, understanding from the Bible what's actually going on here. And we're going to reveal it and show you exactly that this stuff is already talked about in Bible prophecy. So if you haven't seen, obviously, I've talked about this in the intro, Starfall, go to starfallmovie.com and watch that 30-minute documentary. It'll explain everything. So this is what we're talking about tonight. We're going to talk. Obama did a little skit that had UFO talks in it. I thought that was interesting, so I put that as number one.
Skit?
I call it a skit.
Like Saturday Night Live or something?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like he pretends that he's talking about different things that he wants to tell everyone about, and he mentions UFOs and stuff. And you can tell it's scripted. That's what I'm mean by a skit. But then we talk a little bit about Japan and Canada's role in this, because right now Canada and Japan have been asked by our government, the United States government, to become more involved in this UAP as they are UAP disclosure, because they are close allies, I guess is the word. And we're going to talk about how that fits in. And then we got a couple other random things, but then we're going to talk about Bigelow, and we're going to get really deep into this guy because he's a fascinating character. And that's kind of where we're going. So that's the beginning of it, and we're gonna flow. So have you seen this skit by Mr. Obama here?
No, I have not. So this is gonna be news for me. This is gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I clipped a lot of it because it's a lot of politics, and I really hate politics. Hey, I'm not of this world, honestly. Not saying I'm alien, but my thoughts and my life belong up there in heaven. And so I don't
Yeah.
want to be involved unless it's a matter of the constitution of heaven. So leave it at that. Check this out. You ready? Here we go.
Who are just turning 18 and were only 3 or 4 when I was elected. My name's Barack Obama. I was the 44th president of the United States. 2 years ago, more young people voted than in any other election since the 1970s. And because you did, the direction of the country changed. We finally released that huge report about aliens. Oh, sorry, I mean unidentified aerial phenomena. I think these are some pretty good reasons to vote, but I don't need to tell you that there's a lot more that needs to be done.
So that was a much longer skit based that I cut up a little bit, but it was interesting. He mentioned aliens and then was like, oh, UAPs. I mean, and it's because those two aren't really correlated. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can see where you're going there, and I can see what he tried to do there.
What do you mean?
It's supposed to be UFOs or UAPs,
Right.
not aliens. Because now, I mean, there's no data that says these are aliens. There's data that UFOs are real, but there's still speculation as to what they actually are.
Right. Yeah. And so I thought it was really interesting that he correlated those things. I'm not saying that was intentional, or maybe that was a slip. They just said, just throw it in there anyway. These things are kind of a joke still. But I thought that was interesting that they didn't go back and say, no. You meant UFOs to UAPs, not aliens to UAPs. Anyway, I thought that was fascinating. The next thing we got is where is that UFO report? So,
well, I was also going to say, Brad, that
Yeah.
Barack Obama, I think that I know you don't like politics, but what I'm thinking is like this TikTok generation.
Mhm.
Like, I think that's what the kids want to hear. So it makes sense. You know, I was like, why would he put that in there? It's like, oh, yeah, that's right. Because the majority of the people that they are trying to reach out to are also the people who are on TikTok. But
Right.
I digress.
No, I think that you bring up a good point, because I should kind of hash that out a little bit, because that's a misunderstanding I think a lot of people have when I say I don't like politics. It's not necessarily meaning that I don't go vote or I don't have an opinion or I think nothing of the country that I live in. I love the country I live in. I think it's the best country on planet Earth, to be honest. But what I'm saying is, when you get into politics, let's take a specific one, guns, you get into abortion, you get into that stuff. There are some politics that we as Christians need to take a stand on, no doubt about it. But there are some that just muddy the water, and they are not part of God's Constitution. They're part of the United States Constitution. And that's you know what, hang out and just you know what, you got other things, bigger fish to fry, and that are more in God's kingdom to that. That's
Cool.
kind of where I go with that. But
all right, sounds good. Now,
Anyway.
everyone has been red pilled on Brad's politics.
That's what I believe. Anyway, let's move on into the program here.
Love it.
Go ahead.
No, you're good.
All right, UAP. Where is that UAP report? I took this from a person's podcast because I couldn't find it. If someone knows where the source is, this is the good stuff.
The Pentagon is working on a UAP report to Congress. I think it was due on Halloween. Has any version of that report, either classified or unclassified, been delivered? And if not, do you have an ETA on when that might be sent up to the Hill?
Yeah, thanks. So my understanding is that report is being prepared by the Office of the DNI, Director of National Intelligence. So I'd refer you to them in terms of the status. So I'm afraid I won't have anything further until that report comes out.
If I could just follow up, there's been some reporting that Chinese drones may be monitoring U.S. military operations. Has the Pentagon UAP office, I think it's called Arrow now, has it discovered that China is using drones to watch U.S. forces or gather information as part of this process, UAP process?
Sure. I don't have any information on that at the moment, but we'll look into that and come back to you. Thanks very much.
We'll circle back.
He didn't have any information about that stuff, but I thought it was interesting that they did mention it, because it was this whole idea is due, in a few weeks ago, and so so where is it? What's going on? We are all counting down the days in the Discord, and it just kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to see something happen here that's unusual. So we're keeping an eye out for it. everyone should be keeping an eye out for it, because this, this is history in the making, prophecy in the making right now, and we're watching time go on. But Japan. Let's talk about Japan, because we're going to get into the meat of the program. This is where we get away from the random topics and really get into some interesting stuff as we talk about Japan and Canada here. Check this out.
For all the evidence, exposed cover-ups, and acknowledgement by top government officials in countries such as the United States, Japan has been one of the leading nations of skepticism with regards to unidentified flying objects. Despite being the 11th most populous country in the world and known for the specialism in advanced technology, such as artificial intelligence, the East Asian islands' understanding and acceptance of UAPs or extraterrestrial beings remains minimal. Until now, that is. So how can it be that one of the most influential nations here on Earth has taken so long to catch up with the rest of us? Currently a professor at the Center for Theoretical Physics at the University of California, Berkeley, and director of the Cavell Institute for the Physics and Mathematics of the Universe at the University of Tokyo, Hitoshi has the relative credentials to propose his theories in relation to his birthplace and adopted home. Any planet with an environment similar to that of Earth is thought to be at least about 4 light years away from us, he said. Shuttling between such a planet and Earth would take an incredibly long time, even with extremely sophisticated technology. Therefore, if extraterrestrial visitors are involved, it is hard to understand how they travel to Earth so frequently. One may consider this assessment as being rather dubious, yet the amount of investigative professors who have since been drafted for their expertise and opinion speaks for itself.
Pause it right there for a second. So what he's saying is, have you heard the theory that talks about how they think they found Earth-like planets long ways away, and it would just take too long to get there? Light years.
Exoplanets, right?
Yeah.
Those are reported. Exoplanets are reported every week, and I've noticed NASA's been getting kind of like playful with it, just to get attention, just to get people looking at these exoplanets. I mean, there's been like, meatball planets. There's been cotton candy planets. Like, seriously, they were like, oh, an entire planet made out of cotton candy, and it's clickbait, because then you go click it, and then it's like, oh, it's has this stringy substance in the atmosphere, the blah 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 blah. But I mean, they're announcing an exoplanet like all the time, and they're always like, it's kind of on Twitter. These things, if you follow the space news, there's an exoplanet like discovered a lot.
We can't hardly get past Pluto, and they're saying that there's exoplanets, and we're sure there was water on them because they're XYZ from their star. Mm-hmm. I think that's fascinating, but I'm not going to get into it. Anyway. That's that's a rabbit hole. But let's.
You almost got into it, Brad.
I
you
know.
Almost got into
it. There's a whole rant there that I'm going to quit, drop off, and go down. So let's. I think what's interesting, and let's bring it back. I think this is fascinating right here. We already know where these things are, and check this out. We've said this before. We've looked at this map before, and the reason why other countries, there's like, well, why hasn't sophisticated Japan been up on the times? Well, it's because this is an entity. This is what the New Age people are calling a consciousness that is happening, and they're forming around the United States because it's such a powerful nation. And that's why it's looking at the United States and going, this is what we need to start with. And then we can branch out because everybody follows the United States. And that's good and bad. So I think that's interesting. And it's a good thing to point out here. That's why the other countries aren't seeing this as much anymore. I was talking to a friend of mine just recently. I think he's actually in the chat, that was based in... I always hesitate to call people out because I don't know if they want to be talked about, especially if they're in their chat. But he was based in Korea, and he said there wasn't a lot of activity there, not as much as the United States. And so that further confirms this graphic right here that says, look at this. Look, you can actually see the outline of the United States because this is the reported sightings from 1906 to 2014. Anyway, I think that's fascinating.
So it seems to be that these aliens are not, in fact, living on exoplanets, but they are in the United States of America.
Well, they're at least in the world, and they have decided to focus on the United States. And they're
I
not.
have a theory as to why this phenomena is.
Oh,
I
do
don't even. It's
tell.
not even a theory. I don't think it's a theory. I think we know why this is happening in the United States of America, and that is because Western esotericism started in the United States of America.
Yeah,
It's that simple.
It did. But why? Why did it start there? I think it even goes further back there. It started there because, I mean, this is all part of the whole prophecy. This is, oh man, I want to go into this so bad. We're going to do a whole separate video on this because this is all in Revelation. It's all happening right now. It's all really interesting, but you'll have to hold it because we got a show to do. So
maybe it's time to start working on that documentary.
I know it. Actually, we're building a house right now. And why am I talking about this? I should be,
because you're going to have a green screen.
We're going to have a building. We're going to have a place so I can come home and we can do stuff again, just like I had when I was back in California.
Nice.
And we can step out there and you're going to move here, Aaron.
That's where we're working on it.
All right, let's go back into Japan finds these things hostile. Listen to this.
In more contemporary times, as recently as June 2021, has the celebration and perception of UFOs been at the forefront of interested parties across Japan. Last year, the International UFO Laboratory was established in the UFO Interactive Hall within the Rinomachi district of Fukushima Prefecture, and in commemoration of World UFO Day. It is Japan's first and only research institute and contains a massive collection of over 3,000 materials relating to the phenomenon and attracts approximately 10 times as many visitors to its laboratory each calendar year. However, in March 2005, Yamain Raiji of the Democratic Party of Japan stressed the government's interest and concerns regarding UFOs to the General Affairs Committee of the House of Councillors, stressing that a number of unexplained crafts had already arrived here on Earth. Not only were they identified and recorded, the entities were considered hostile to Japanese defense forces and that of the general population.
Ooh, what do you think of that? I think that's fascinating. They consider them hostile to this population.
I want to know why. Yeah, I was just thinking, like, is it Japan or it's China that's like crazy with their surveillance? I think it's China. Okay. Yeah, because I was thinking like they're the most security-driven country region like ever. And why, like you figure that they would have this figured out by now, but yeah, that was really interesting.
Yeah. I was in China in 2014. I forget the exact date, and man, every single stoplight, camera. I mean, like 18 cameras on every single intersection, so they can track and find some car or person. Yeah, it's a surveillance state, and some people like it, some people don't. But anyway, let's grab into this. So you want to know how COVID fits into all this? You ready for this? This is interesting.
As time and technology has progressed, the global acceptance of UAPs has forced countries like Japan to look at things differently and open their minds to the fact that extraterrestrial events are on the increase. After the coronavirus outbreak, more and more sightings, events, and investigations have come to the fore as those affected by lockdowns and home containment were given the opportunity to refocus their attentions and sanction time to put their apprehensions to the side. The good thing about this period of unrest has allowed one to understand the possibilities and global occurrences that have presented themselves for the better. COVID-19 proved that when large corporate industries and that of universal consumption either shut down or ground to an immediate halt for a short period of time, nature was therefore able to take a breath and refresh the globe with cleaner air, water, and safeguard animal and marine life. Luckily, during this time, recordings were released of US Navy fighter jets and their encounters with that of UFOs, which occurred over the last few years and decades.
So interesting, because everywhere we go, we're seeing some similarities here. This is one of them. that they are very, very tied to this idea of environmentalism, or what is it called? The climate change movement, or what is the Pope is really involved in this, isn't he? Have you heard a lot about this?
Yeah, we've been hearing about the COP27 and the shenanigans down there in Egypt and the Sinai Peninsula. So yeah, there's any story that I've heard of these aliens or UFOs, the topic of climate change, the climate crisis usually comes up. It's like, we've always said this, Brad, it's always like three things. It's Jesus being one of them, you are a god being the other, and the third is climate change. Like, what a weird trio of messages to bring all across the galaxy,
and some form of
just the planet
Armageddon
Earth.
because
And some
of
form of yeah.
because either technology or nuclear weapons or some other form of, hey, you're all going to die, by the way, because of yourselves. And so those are the heavy topics that these things are always surrounding.
Especially like what's that group? What are they called? Come on,
Anunnaki,
climate in Ukraine and Russia, which is crazy. This is like they're Ukraine-based. Creative Society,
yes,
and Alatra. That's what they are. Creative Society and Alatra. They're like upset. I mean, Creative Society is the climate change, climate crisis arm of this group Alatra, which is the spiritual Anunnaki alien message. I know this sounds like gibberish to some people who are watching, but there's a group based out of Ukraine that started in Ukraine that has like heavily theosophical themes, and they claim to be in contact now. If you can go to their YouTube channel, they claim that they have Anunnaki alien members a part of their organization. Now, today, this is what they claim, and they are heavily pushing this climate crisis agenda.
So isn't that fascinating? So do you believe, and I'm kind of baiting you on this, I have to say, but do you believe that these demonic entities are, because that's what they are, these extraterrestrials are what they have been saying they are, but these demonic entities are in human form, and some of them around right now, even, I mean, we probably can't know who, but do you think that actually exists?
I tend to think that there are angels, both good and evil angels, who are mingled with the affairs of men. I think that there are entities and beings who are very interested in the things that are happening here on Earth. And I've told you this before, Brad, that I'm less interested in what these things look like. I'm less interested in how they travel here. I'm less interested in all of those things. I am interested in what their message is. The Bible says that, I think it's John, or is it 2 John? I have it right here, 1:7. For many deceivers have gone out into the world. Interesting. Many deceivers have gone out into the world. This could be taken a couple of different ways.
Sure.
But it says here, those who do not acknowledge Jesus Christ as coming in the flesh. This is the deceiver and the antichrist. This is definitive language used here. So for many deceivers have gone out into the world. Interesting. Well, who are these deceivers who have gone out into the world? Sorry, if you're already in the world, I don't think it's talking about worldlings of this world, in my opinion. I mean, in context, some may argue like, no, they're talking about false prophets. Well, fine, sure, but they're still working in agency with these demonic beings, these fallen beings. So I do believe that they are mingled in the affairs of men. And what I am still waiting for an answer for from the ufologists and the UFO community is that why are the ones that are so interested in our nuclear war programs and in climate change, they're so hung up on discrediting the divinity and the role and the status of Jesus Christ? Let's talk about that. Okay, fine. Let's give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's say, for the sake of the argument, the aliens are real. Why are they traveling all the way here to talk about how Jesus isn't the true Messiah? Because it's a scientific inquiry. If we're going to, say that this thing is a scientific phenomenon, I want to know why they're so interested in Jesus. So
we're actually going to get into that with Bigelow.
That's my take, and I hope you guys are able to follow that. But I mean, fine. People want to talk about aliens. We're here. Let's talk about aliens. Why are they so against Jesus Christ of the Bible?
Right. Okay. All right. Now for the moment that we were all waiting for, USA talks in
Yeah.
Japan. This is what we were kind of leading up to.
Mhm.
But then we're going to talk a little bit about what we just talked about. If you follow me, here we go.
Mr. Kono did in fact study the videos presented by the Pentagon himself, and made the unpopular decision to test and develop aeronautical defense strategies and procedures in the event that such an encounter took place. The Defense Ministry of Japan, on September 14, 2020, began the process of informed all military, naval and air force personnel that if an unexplained situation or aircraft presents itself, a protocol of analysis, reporting and photographic evidence are now considered paramount to their obligations. This long-awaited deviation from the norm came after a meeting between Mr. Kono and then US Defense Secretary Mark Esper within the controlled, unincorporated territory of Guam, situated in the western Pacific Ocean. Both men discussed all things related to defense, militarized strategies, and most importantly, unidentified flying objects. This coupled with the fact that in the capital, Tokyo, the government has advised all citizens to photograph, record, and submit their own findings to their political leaders.
See, this guy's channel makes the most boring news article very mysterious with the music in the background. I love it, but it was an interesting article, and I think he did a good job of dramatizing it. We got a few more of him, but no, we don't. That was actually a long clip I cut, but it's interesting that Japan and US are talking about this. That's kind of my main point of showing that clip.
Yeah. Well, that doesn't surprise me, Brad, because I know we've had conversations, especially with Joe Jordan specifically, about how these things are happening. Like in your graphic, this is a United States phenomenon. It is my hypothesis that if you take a look at Bible prophecy and you understand America's role in Bible prophecy, America plays a large role in leading the entire world to wonder after and to worship and to make an image to the beast. Who is the beast? The beast we understand to be Rome, the pagan Roman Empire, also known as the holy or unholy Roman Empire, depending on who you are.
Now you're going to get in some hate speech.
That's all right. Bring it on. Come on, bring it. Go to Twitter at Parallax and with the 0_0. Bring all your hate speech there. We'll talk about it.
And we don't believe that it's actually the people. Catholicism
not at all.
Isn't
It's a system
being attacked here.
It's
There's
a
system,
corrupt government system.
A system of calling a priest your father when the Bible specifically says don't call any man a father. You don't go to a man instead of going to Jesus Christ. What the Catholic Church, let's make it plain, they have said, hey, you come to us and ask forgiveness for our sins. We stand in the place of God. The whole system is corrupt, and there's just evidence after evidence after evidence showing the Catholic Church there's something wrong going on here. And so that's what we're saying.
And you make a good point by saying it's not the people. I don't believe it's the people. It's the system. What is the system? And what does an image of that system look like? Well, it's church and state mingled. Mm-hmm. I've brought this up to some ufologists before that, if there's a slight chance, just a slight chance that this is a spiritual phenomena, do we want the government having the sanctioned narrative in what this spiritual phenomena is? Because now you've just erected a church-state system, because now they're going to have the authority where they're going to these godlike ambassadors and they are mingling in the affairs with these ambassadors. I mean, you're erecting the government to become as gods to you. Mm-hmm. And that was the issue with the Roman empire, with the Roman Catholic Church empire, the institution, the system. They were the sanctioned narrative. They had the official narrative of spirituality and existence and ultimately worship. So, and this is a quick little tangent, Brad, but what is worship other than acknowledging that something or someone is your creator? So if the government comes out and say, hey, we now know the truth of creation and creation narrative, and the creation story, and here's how we got here. Well, now you have given the government free reign over your conscience, And that's dangerous. Yeah, and that's extremely dangerous. And so that's what it means, in my observation and in my studies in the Bible, what it means to have a church state, make an image to the beast. The beast was a church state system. So that's kind of how I see, and why I see the United States of America leading the world into this, because eventually I think people are going to turn to these beings as their gods.
And there's much more evidence in the Bible. We can take out scripture after scripture and show you this, but we haven't done it yet because this is there's always so much going on. Starfall 2, I'm sure it's going to be the return of the Jesuits, not the Jedi, the Jesuits.
Hey, hold on. All right, yeah, the Jedi Jesuits. I'm starting to get I feel a conspiracy theory coming on, Brad.
All right. And so let me bring up this graphic. This is interesting. This is kind of going along the same lines. I might not be able to read this, but I'm going to try to. I'm going to maximize it so I'm not going to be able to see anything else in just a moment. But this is an interesting article from ctvnews.ca. This is a Canada news agency. Let me read this real quick. Members of the Pentagon UFO task force, notice they didn't say UAP for some reason, briefed Canadian military officials earlier this year. A previously unreported meeting that was revealed this week, February 22 briefing, was led by a U.S. Air Force intelligence officer who contributed to a headline-grabbing June 2021 report on the recent American military sighting of unidentified aerial phenomenon, or UAP. The term U.S. authorities use for what are more commonly known as unidentified flying objects and UFOs. According to a document released on November 14, the February briefing was delivered by multiple members of the Pentagon UAP task force and attended by 10 Canadian defense officials, including personnel from the Royal Canadian Air Force and Canadian Forces Intelligence Command, which is responsible for collecting and assessing military intelligence. The document provided few other details. Officials from the Department of Defense, UAP Task Force, and the National Intelligence Manager for Aviation met with Canadian Department of National Defense and Royal Canadian Air Force officials on February 22 as part of our continued partnership on airspace security to include unidentified aerial phenomenon, unquote, U.S. intelligence or U.S. Department of Defense spokesperson Susan told CTV News. Canadian Department of the National Defense was unable to provide comments ahead of the publication. It's clear the American UAP Task Force wants to work with our government, conservative defense critic James told CTV News on Tuesday from Ottawa. Ottawa?
I think it's Ottawa.
Ottawa. Anyway, or any attempt from the government of Canada officials to downplay either the data or the reports would be completely unacceptable. Something's happening here. I think the government is seeking help from their allies to understand the situation. They've reached out. It's come out into the open in local news, and they've reached out to government officials elsewhere. They say, hey, you see what's going on here. Why don't you help us out with this thing? Do you have anything on this? I think this is going out. This is public, and it's, even though there's not much news on it, we haven't got that UAP report yet that was due on October 31. By the way, that was Reformation Day, not Halloween. It was due, and it's not here yet. And so I think even though there's things going on, there's things happening behind the scenes
that's right.
as well.
It's making its way in darkness, as they say. And well, the same thing's happening with the climate and the things that are to come with that whole shenanigan. There are things that I think that we're so addicted to, these announcements and big, world shaking announcements to happen, but it's it doesn't always happen like that. It's not always in the best interest. I mean, they're calling this thing a potential national security threat. I don't think that they believe that the aliens are a national security threat. I believe that they think that the people who, upon learning about these UFOs and UAPs, they become the national security threat. The infrastructure of society it's compromised, that's a national security threat. But I don't believe they actually think that these UFO or UAP things to them are a national security threat. It's more like the knowledge of it. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, they're still making their moves. They're still working on it. I heard that the report was released internally, which sounds
Oh.
about like government.
Right.
So
Yeah, no, I haven't even heard that yet.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
interesting.
that's the word on the block, is that it was released, but released internally.
Interesting. Let's move on into Bigelow. That's what we got next. I think this is interesting. If you don't know who Bigelow is, Robert Bigelow was. I'll give you a quick synopsis of what I understand about him. Some of the old fogies in this UFO stuff will know a lot more about him, but he has ties to Skinwalker Ranch. He's a very big philanthropist. He owns a big hotel chain, I believe. And he decided that he's very interested in the paranormal. And so he runs a scientific, I'm going to use my finger quotes, scientific research center. It was actually pretty big. It has a giant, I wish I could show you this. I should have gotten this graphic, a giant alien face on the side of its metal building. And
What building? What's the name of it?
Bigelow. Let's look that up. It was interesting to me.
If you want, I can pull it up.
Yeah.
And throw it on the screen. It's called Bigelow.
Bigelow. I don't know what it is. It's a name.
Scientific.
Let's see if I can find it. Bigelow. Bigelow
Laboratory for Oceans.
Is some kind of thing. Aerospace. Bigelow Aerospace.
It's aerospace because they have an ocean place too. It looks like.
Let's see images. And all I remember is looking at the side of the building and going, "Oh, look at that! He's got a giant alien face on the side of his building." And it's going to call me a liar now, but I'll find it. I'll put it in the notes. Maybe I'll put it in the YouTube show notes later on. But this guy's kind of been an interesting character, and so we're going to get into his life just a little bit here because he goes into the supernatural and spiritual side of this thing, and he doesn't have everything right. But we're going to talk about it. Here we go. Maybe we'll talk about it as soon as this disappears. I got to flow through this. Here we go.
Is it risky for you to say, in public that you believe in UFOs and aliens?
I don't care.
You don't worry that some people will say, "Did you hear that guy? He sounds like he's crazy."
I don't care.
Why not?
It's not going to make a difference. It's not going to change reality of what I know.
Do you imagine that in our space travels we will encounter other forms of intelligent life?
You don't have to go anywhere.
You can find it here.
Yeah.
Where exactly?
It's just like right under people's noses. Oh my gosh. Wow.
So she didn't really question him much about this, and this isn't the only clip I have of this. He's going to go into detail in just a second, but he is questioned by that girl, who, by the way, has a very interesting story. Ugh, there's so many rabbit holes. Interesting story about going over to Egypt. She had a terrible experience in Egypt. You should look that up sometime. It was really bizarre. But as a reporter, it has nothing to do with aliens, but just terrible things that happened to her. But as she's interviewing Bigelow, he's saying, "Hey, look, you know what? You don't have to go into outer space to find these things," which is exactly what we understand as the legitimate understanding of this whole thing. You don't have to go. These things are here. It's a presence that's here. Yeah. It's angelic. They're fallen angels. And so he's going into detail into that in this next clip, where a very friendly, well-known, what is his name, a reporter on these things asks him point blank, "What do you mean by that?" You have a comment? Sorry, I
completely... No, go for it.
Okay, here we go.
Yep.
60 Minutes. You're on 60 Minutes. I've seen this quote 10,000 times since you delivered it. But the correspondent, Lara Logan, had asked you about, are they here? Or no, I forget what the question was, but, are you worried that people think you're crazy, and you say you're not? And then you said something more provocative, that we don't have to look too far for them.
Right.
Do we know who them is, and what did you mean by it?
Well, there's a couple different ways to go at this. So one is from a hardware standpoint. The other one is from the presence standpoint, ET presence. And, you know, a lot of people say, well, whether they're, you know, that they can be among the population, whether they're hybrids or they're some other kind of really look alike, you know, kind of thing. But so you can look at it different kinds of ways. And, and so I know of a really good, high quality researcher who has a fantastic academic credentials and background, and he would be more predisposed to the latter, saying that, yeah, they could be among us, you know, and so, but he's probably on the more extreme. He's definitely on the more extreme. Others would say, well, we're safe in saying that there's hardware, you know, so that's among us in a hardware kind of context.
And the discarnate entities, call them spirits, whatever it was that was at the ranch, the spirits that you're going to be investigating through VIX, they could be among us too.
Well, if you follow the literature and pay attention to a lot of other kinds of sources, they absolutely are.
So that first part of his answer, I almost cut just because he sounded like he had no idea what he wanted to say. And he went, well, we can two different ways. We can talk about the, and I think what he's kind of trying to say here is that we have realized that we can sense this stuff, which is demonic. You can, you know, if they allow themselves, you can sense these things, or we have seen their silly manifestations in the sky. Of course, he doesn't interpret it this way, but he says these are the two different ways we can see it. And so the reporter says, well, what about Skinwalker Ranch? What about the ranch? Is this what you found at the ranch? And he says, well, yeah, you know, he's been involved in that. So he bought, I think, and I see
he owned it at some point.
That's what I just saw in the comments. He owned Skinwalker Ranch to do a bunch of information. This is coming about halfway through when we're going to do these talk. He's going to talk a little bit about that and what he found there, because it has some strange ties to OSAP. You know what OSAP is? OSAP is the ATIP parallel.
There's so many acronyms.
Yeah.
I honestly don't keep track on which is which, but they're all little.
According to the messages, the understanding that's out there right now, Lou Elizondo started this thing at the Pentagon, or was involved in ATIP. ATIP, we thought, had a budget, and they were doing stuff with this thing. But it turns out, at least this is the understanding at this moment, at this date of this recording, that the ATIP budget was very small. It was just kind of a personal project. And the really big millions of dollars to understand this stuff was going to OSAP, which was another acronym. And it was ran by another group that was studying these things. Well, OSAP, as we'll learn in just a second, it was actually a system given to Bigelow. So Bigelow was researching these things as a side project, kind of contracting out by the government as a personal project, as he was being releasing information to. I think that's the understanding as I'm doing my research here. I'm trying to put the pieces together, trying to understand this so that we can better get a grasp of where the government is on this stuff. Not because I'm, you know, super fascinated by it. It is super fascinating though. But let's move on into this graphic. This is what I was alluding to when I was baiting you the other day, or not the other day, just a moment ago. This is some Bible commentary. Check this out. This is what I find it's kind of interesting. It says the Lord will have the Lord would have our perceptions keen to understand that those mighty ones who visit our world have borne an active part in all the work which we have called our own. These heavenly beings are ministering angels. Now, this is talking about the good angels, right? This is not talking about the evil angels right now. And they have frequently disguised themselves in forms of humans. And we've seen that in the Bible, right? When Job and stuff, how they've come down and they wanted to see what was going on in the city before they destroyed, not Job, excuse me, Lot, Sodom and
Yeah.
Gomorrah, right?
Yep.
And as strangers,
It's happened frequently in the Bible.
Yeah.
Where angels appearing as men, whether these are angels transforming themselves into men to look like men, or whether there's a rank of angels that actually do appear as men, I don't know. I don't have the answer for that.
Right. Yeah.
let's-
We don't really know. But as it said, the commentary continues, as strangers, they converse with those who are engaged in the work of God. In lonely places, they have been the companions of travelers in peril. In tempest-tossed ships, angels in human form have spoken words of encouragement to allay fear and inspire hope in the hour of danger. And the passengers have thought that it was one of their number whom they had never before spoken. Many, under different circumstances, have listened to the voices of the inhabitants of other worlds. They have come to act a part in this life. They have spoken in assemblies and opened before assemblies human histories, and have done works which it was impossible for human agencies to do. Time and time again, they have been the generals of armies. They have been sent forth to cleanse away the pestilence. They have eaten at the humble board of families. Often they have appeared a weary traveler in need of shelter for the night. We need to understand better than we do the work of these angel visitants. It would be well for all whom claim to be children of God to consider that the works or the words they speak are in the hearing of heavenly beings, and that they behold the works they do. Who would think that heavenly angels are cooperating with us in our work? But so it is, and thus earth is connected with heaven. Oh, that's just fascinating. I mean, to think that you could go down the road. Okay, so I'm gonna share a little story. This is a little personal story from my father. My father was going down the road. He's taking a long trip, and just recently, maybe 10 years ago, so not too recently. I don't remember. He told me the story once, and he was going down the road, and he was thinking, I really wish I could see an angel. I really wish I could actually see an angel. And he stopped at the gas station, and he got out of the car, and he was pumping gas, and this guy walked up to him and was pushing one of those long brooms, kind of cleaning around the gas station. He said, "How you doing?" And my dad was like, "You know what? I'm pumping gas, and nobody talks to me." He says, "Hey, good. How are you?" And he pushes the broom, and he's just cleaning up. He says to him, "My, I wish it was a little warmer out here, don't you? It's kind of chilly." And my dad is like, "Yeah, it's kind of chilly today." Gets in the car, goes and continues down the road. My dad does, and he looks in the back, and he's got like 3 coats that he had in the back. And he said, "Oh man, I should have given that guy a coat." And then it dawned on him, what in the world? That could have been an angel that he had prayed about. He said, "Man, I wish I'd seen an angel." You just don't know. I mean, just reading this quote makes me go, huh, you know what? These who knows? Who knows what's going on? There's been so many stories where we just don't know for sure. I mean, I can think of a few more, but I'll digress. But I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think that's legit. I would say I've had some really interesting interactions that were probably the angels on the other side. This, BC, before Christ in my life, or at least while Christ was working on my life. I've had some really interesting interactions that I've looked back and I said, "Oh, like that was a little out of the norm." But I do want to speak to that. Can you pull that quote back up? That that little bit of there. So something that fascinates me so much is the way that the Bible uses the term hosts of heaven, heavenly hosts, We are told not to worship the hosts of heaven, but we're also told that the hosts of heaven do the Lord's bidding. They do the Lord's work. And so the way that we use the word host today in 2022 is different from how the word host was used back when the Bible was put together. The word host, and also in the Hebrew, the word host was actually meant visitor. You can go to any etymology online. Right here, I have the website pulled up where you can search for online. It's an online etymology dictionary. And it says here that a host comes from hostess, and it used to mean a stranger or a foreigner. In a classical sense, an enemy. It goes back even further than that, where it was actually neutral, and it described anyone who was a visitor. So that's why when you think of the concept of the Lord of armies, right? It says they have been generals of armies here in this commentary. Well, in the Bible, we have even the Lord of hosts. What does that even what does that mean? Well, today the word host means something differently than what it meant back when the Bible was written in inspiration. The word host was this was a term that, and I believe the Hebrew is Sabaoth. If I'm wrong or right, someone correct me. Let's find out what that is. But anyway, it implied someone who's visiting. So an army was called hosts because, and I mean, the word host meant visitor. An army also was meant host because the armies were those who would come and invade other countries or other nations. They were the invading forces. So you would look in the distance and you say, oh, it was a host of armies, or it was a host of men. It wasn't a word that described someone who's at a cocktail party and inviting in guests. So I find that a little bit of interesting history, but the reason why I bring that up, because I believe that this is dead on a description of how angels work and mingle in the affairs of humans on earth. Quite literally, they're called visitors, which is why I don't really break my neck too much when I'm having conversations and people want to use the term aliens. This is my personal conviction. I'm not saying this is Brad's opinion or this is an official Strange Normal view. But when somebody says an alien, well, what's an alien? It just means a foreigner or a stranger or an invader. That's all that means. And the word host also means the same thing when you look back at the origin of that word. So we have in the Bible the Lord of hosts. It says here, even this is in Isaiah 24:21. I mean, it's mentioned all over the Bible. I encourage everyone to do a word study on the word host in the Bible, and in context of what we talk about on this channel, and your mind will be blown. It says here that in that day the Lord will punish the powers in heaven above. And it is also, that word used there is also host, if you're reading the King James version. So it's really interesting that this word host is so relevant in context. I mean, it deserves its own word study, and maybe even a video one day we should upload to the channel describing the word host and how it's used throughout the Bible. But it seems to me that it refers to the angels that appear as men.
Interesting. Yeah, and I think that's interesting because who knows? I mean, these angels, which I've often heard, angel means messenger. It doesn't mean it's a specific seraphim or cherubim.
Right.
I mean, they could live only in heaven, and that could be its own planet or a different dimension. We don't know. And so either way, it's on a different world. So these things are of different world. Technically, they're alien. Let's digress from that for a moment because we could go all over the place with that. But
well, the gist of what I'm getting at here is the way that this is. It says here, we have it highlighted. Heavenly beings disguise themselves as in the form of human beings. It says, listen, have listened to the inhabitants of other worlds, have spoken in assemblies. So it sounds like there is some blending in here. Heavenly angels are cooperating with us in our work. If this had been written when the Bible was written, the word here would have been used host, and it just means strangers or foreigners. And that's what they are in context in relation to planet Earth. They are, strangers and foreigners. These
Interesting.
angels are.
Interesting. Yeah, that's why it's so important to know what the message is. It's not necessarily the person, it's or the entity.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
the message that they're giving. And
Absolutely.
if the message doesn't align with the Bible, the New and the Old Testament, it is no light in it whatsoever.
Well, there's 3 angels in the book of Revelation, and they have a message, and their message is 100% the gospel. And it's fascinating that, I think this is going to come down to a battle of the messages. It's going to be the great controversy between Christ and Satan. It's going to be this battle of worldviews, essentially, or cosmological cosmologies, essentially. And there are beings who are here who have a completely different cosmology that they want to tell you about, that the universe is self-created and God is this, universal source or power, that everyone together is God. And then you have angels who have a completely opposite narrative, who are saying, no, God created everything in 6 days, rested on the seventh, fear God, give him glory. He made everything in heaven and that is on earth. And don't buy into this false worship system. That's Revelation chapter, was it 16? 14, right? Revelation 14, 6 through 12.
Yeah, something like that. Oh, that's right. Here you go. You got it before me. Yeah, very good. We completely rabbit trailed in that, but it was a good rabbit trail. I appreciate that. Let's jump back in the Bigelow. He's going to run a contest to find out what the truth is about death. So let's check this out just a moment, because it's rather interesting.
Well, BIX is a research organization first. We hope to stimulate research and stimulate interest in survival of human consciousness. And so we're taking it kind of one step at a time. Yes, we're trying to stimulate conversation and debate in a subject that is to some people a little scary. You don't want to contemplate your own death. So far, nobody has escaped that. So it's a pretty serious subject.
Yeah.
And we want to provide an opportunity for a forum for really good quality essays to be written to, that's the function of the prize, is first, second, third place. And we have $500,000 first place award, $300,000 for second place, and $150,000 for third.
So Money talks. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So what has happened here, and he's going to get into this a little further, is his wife has died, and he said it's a very difficult thing for him, and so he wants to find out what has happened at death. And he says, I don't believe in the atheist idea. I don't believe in the Christian idea. I don't know what I believe, but there's some new age stuff that he believes, and he wants to understand it more. And so he's picked judges. Anyway, I'm getting further into the program, but I just listen to see what happens here.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, I know. Spoiler alert. I'm going to start ranting over this, because this is a big deal. This is just like, if you guys have been a part of the channel for a while, you go back, you watch I did a whole documentary on the topic of death. It's really interesting. I'll look that up while this next clip is playing, but you got to go back and see it, and
you got to give us a spiel before the end of tonight.
It's a spiel about death. It's rather interesting, because you have three reporters that all have an experience with these demonic entities regarding death, and it causes them to look at everything completely different because of their experience. That's exactly what happened to Bigelow. It's happening over and over and over again. And so check this out. We're gonna go into this. I'll find the name of that documentary real quick.
We have some very heavy hitters in terms of people who have applied that have terrific backgrounds in this field.
So you've got applicants already?
Oh, we do. We absolutely do.
And you're vetting them too, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, carefully. Yeah. So we're not just randomly saying, okay, we're going to throw anybody into the pot here who has something to say, but they have no foundation for the depth of the research that's required to say something. and quoting scripture isn't allowed because anybody can do that. We're looking for more kinds of commentary from evidentiary kind of approach.
Testimony, eyewitness?
Witnesses matter. You know, we took the Western court system as our guide in terms of beyond a reasonable doubt, which doesn't mean 100%, but that's enough to convict, you know, a decision. And witnesses matter.
The preponderance of data.
Absolutely, absolutely. What's the consensus that you've gathered here from a lot of different multiple sources?
So you're excited about who signed up so far?
Oh, I am. We have some very, very talented people who devoted their lives to this subject, not because of it from a religious perspective, but from a serious intent to do scientific investigation.
So we're going to invoke scientific practice here, theory, come up with a theory, try to prove it. You're looking for evidence that's not just circumstantial, but empirical. You're looking for a scientific approach.
Yes, we are. You know, maybe things that are caught on camera, right, as well as testimony, and that's, you know, pictures are worth 1,000 words, right? And so it matters how they were taken, who took them, was there anything doctored up about the photography in any kind of way.
So that's interesting, especially at the very beginning. What he's looking for is not biblical evidence. He wants something physical, something tangible that is written by a well-known scientist to submit a research paper to win $150,000, $350,000, $500,000, basically. And I think it's interesting also that this, when you're looking at stuff, you either take the Bible as it is and say, this is the holy word of God, this is the writ, or this, or hey, I want to go with something that's tangible, that I can see with my senses. Your senses can be manipulated. That's what science doesn't understand. Your senses can be manipulated. And if you manipulate your senses, then you're done for. You can't trust your senses. That's not a monologue. I just think that's interesting that he's going that route. The documentary I was mentioning was number one deadly belief that will destroy Christians. You got to go see this on the YouTube channel, Strange Normal, or you can go to strangenormal.org and go to documentaries. Look for the image is called Dead Christian Spirits, and it's really fascinating. You got to go see that because
can you give us a little tiny? Give us a. I mean, come on, you can't leave them. You got to give them a little commercial here. 30 seconds, Brad. 60 seconds.
No.
Give us a 60-second.
I wish I could. You're trying to get shorts out of me, and shorts as in those little long form videos. I can't. I wasn't even prepared to talk about this. You guys just got to go see it. But you know what? We could probably make a short out of that documentary, or I can. You've already got two great shorts in here, 60 seconds, that I think you have at the very beginning that are fantastic. So anyway, we're totally off. Requirements. So check this out. Check this out.
You're getting egged on in the chat now.
I know.
Bradley. Just kidding.
Which one did we just do? I'm totally off of my timeline now.
You did the one with the guy talking here at the space hotel. By the way, apparently that structure behind him is a space hotel. That's what CE4 research is saying. Yeah.
I was wondering if that was some kind of scientific laboratory of some kind that they were.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. Yeah.
So requirements for like quoting scripture is not allowed. That was the main point that he was trying to build out of that. He wants something. Now this is where he gets really strange. He starts talking about mediums and psychics. Ready?
You know, that's you can say what you want about mediums and psychics and so forth, but it's my experience that there are a few that are absolutely legitimate. They are real in terms of their abilities, and
again, the preponderance of data over the years tells you there's something there.
It does. It absolutely does. Yeah. It does. And there's so much of something there. There's so much smoke. There's got to be some fire, and I don't mean hellfire and damnation fire. Yeah. But I mean, there is something there because there's too much going on, and there has been for many, many centuries.
So he's talking. Yeah. And so he's like, hey, look, there's some evidence behind these things. And let me put this in perspective. This is the man that the government has been giving top secret UFO, UAP, all this stuff to go analyze. Millions and millions of dollars
Yeah.
they've given this guy to go research the paranormal on Skinwalker
Yeah.
Ranch. And he's believing in psychics. He's believing in all these paranormal stuff. And he says, oh yeah, all this New Age stuff, it's legit. There's stuff behind it. And we are just looking for paperwork and trying to legitimize it with science. My tax dollars at work. Yay. that's what this is.
Yeah.
That's
Don't get too political, Brad. I see you over there. I see you over there.
All right. Get back into it. What else? What other crazy stuff is this guy saying? Renewed interest. This is where he talks about his wife.
Let me ask you, is there any part of your personal loss that has prompted you to launch into this project?
It is. I would say I have a renewed interest because of my wife's passing, but I was very interested in this in the 80s, in the late 80s. And back at that time, I was also investigating the UFO topic.
Right.
And both of these, I like the phenomena aspects of the challenge.
The paranormal.
Yeah, those are the two holy grails. And I think what happens to you after you die is the first holy grail.
Absolutely.
And the second one is, are we alone?
Right.
So.
Are you not satisfied that the data you've seen, the empirical evidence, the pictures, video, you're not convinced that's enough in your mind to show that there is life after?
Oh, I don't need convincing.
Okay.
I am already totally convinced. I have so many things,
Okay.
including personal experiences and a lot of reading of a lot of literature, talking to an awful lot of people, that I don't need convincing.
Okay.
That isn't what this is all about. It's not me. And I get correspondences from people that are friends or I don't even know, and the correspondences say, I have all the answers for you. All the answers to all the questions that you're seeking, I have the answers. And I'm laughing to myself a little bit because I'm saying, in some ways, you don't even know what the questions are. You know, you're looking at this from a conventional standpoint, and the questions are far beyond that.
Yeah, you're looking for a more open mind. We're looking at a spectrum from, like you said, agnostics to atheists to diehard, rigid religionists, and you're asking, let's take a whole new look at this again. Wait a minute, let's open this up for.
Well, this is kind of thin ice territory, because there are people that get offended if you start to question the religious teachings they have, and maybe that says there is nothing beyond this.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a certain quantity of folks, and that's in that category. And then others that say, well, I know exactly what it is. It's an eternal purgatory or hellfire and damnation, or you're going to be floating around playing a harp forever, and that's it.
Yeah.
And no, from my background and experience, that isn't it. That isn't all there is.
So he's running basically running a contest to try to prove that there is an afterlife from a scientific perspective, but he doesn't believe the Bible's afterlife, and he's going to choose judges based on this. So he says, I'm not going to be the one deciding if this is true or not, but isn't there some legitimacy to if you choose the people that are going to do it and you say this is a qualified judge, aren't you kind of manipulating the contest?
Yeah, not only that, but what's with this like postmodern obsession with trying to break things that aren't broken, or they always say, if it ain't fixed, don't fix it. You know what I mean? Or if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it's like, that's what I'm hearing a lot in this UFO world and this New Age world, especially, like, hey, let's go and upend every religious thing that's ever been written and let's like redo it and refigure it out because I'm pretty sure we got it wrong. Like, no, just leave it alone. It's your pride that wants to go to try to reinvent the wheel here. You want to strike gold and have the monopoly on religion. I think it's human pride that wants to, try to refigure this thing out that's already been solved. I mean, you see that in social politics a lot too. It's like, yeah, we thought we had like gender figured out, but let's like try to rework that, and because we probably don't really have that figured out, so let's come up with 97 different genders and just reinvent the thing. But it's human pride, right? Like everybody wants to be the new CEO of the world, essentially, and wants to discover. And that's what I see in this ufologist culture too, is this like everyone trying to strike gold so that they can have the monopoly on the truth of reality. And I just think that comes from a deep-seated place of human pride, which makes me so happy that we do have the Word of God, accounts and testimonies from multiple people from Genesis to Revelation, God revealing himself and saying, here's the narrative. Like, this is what's reality. Stay rooted in this. And I think that it is healthy to have boundaries with people who want to try to upend your values and your worldview and your faith to try to get you to think, something differently. And I also think that anyone who wants to try to, get rid of your spiritual foundation or your belief in God to make it something different really just wants worship for themselves. I think it comes from a place of wanting to have the authority over your conscience and not God. That's the problem with communism. I'm not saying this guy is a communist, but you find that in communism, right? I know you don't want to get too political, Brad, but it's there. The idea of like, let's get rid of God so that we could be the authority of what reality is. Yeah. And that's dangerous, and I'm just like, I'm so thankful that we don't have to worry about trying to figure out the nature of reality, because we have the Word of God. We have a sure word of prophecy.
Absolute. Let me see what else is next here. This is his historical. Let's just get into it.
Well, so you're not going to judge these yourself?
Oh, no.
Will you have any part of that?
No.
Okay.
No, absolutely not. Myself and staff, we have hands off. It's up to our 5 judges who are terrific folks, terrific backgrounds. And so we're not going to be suggesting anything. It's up to them, to make the decisions. And so that's...
Was that tough choosing those 5 people?
It was. We gave a lot of thought to who they should be, and we interviewed a number of prospective judges beyond the 5 that were selected, and we're very happy with the 5.
Very happy with the 5.
So you said, please, no quoting of Scripture. What about the use of the Bible as a historical document, say, in this?
Well, you have to... I'm guessing that the judges are going to be pretty demanding as to making sure that it's not allegory, and if you're trying to create and relate a certain story that comes from the Bible, how thoroughly is it substantiated? And so I think that's really interesting territory that can have problems. It can be problematic to do that. And I don't know, there probably will be some applicants who are submitting their essays that get into that area. I don't know how sympathetic the judges are going to be to that. I think they may be looking for more, something that's more tangible, that they can actually, you can define, you can get your hands around it and say, this absolutely, positively happened. We know this, and here's why. And that's why we can say the other side does exist.
I'm gonna quote you here from a previous interview that I've read about you, and one of your statements was, "What if it does matter how you live your life now?"
Yeah.
That could fit into a karmic paradigm or any sort of religion where you're responsible for your actions now, and that would affect the afterlife.
And apparently, in my limited research and understanding so far, there seems to be a karmic effect that what you can do for others matters.
Sort of what goes around comes around, or
Yeah, I would say so.
You do good, you receive good. You give, you receive those kind of things.
Yeah. So you get into the effects of consciousness and the effects of thought. So consciousness is a force. Because again, if you're observing subatomic particles, then they coalesce into a particular point, and you can calculate the speed and so forth. And when they're unobserved, they're not. They're everywhere. They're like a cloud. So consciousness is a force. And if you've heard of micro and macro PK, and people who have demonstrated that have done so on film in bell jars. They've been able to levitate things and so forth. So that's from consciousness effect. So it's outside the five senses that we're familiar with. It's outside of all physics too. Yeah. There are no explanations for these kinds of things. So our physics is very, very incomplete, hugely incomplete. True. Thought is a more of a creator kind of thing. Okay. So so those are two very maybe universal forces, and I'm always suspicious of theorists and physicists who claim to understand how the universe was evolved and how it began.
I feel that way about archaeologists. They think they've got it set in stone, and every time they discover something new, they have to rearrange their theories.
And if you don't know what 95% of all energy is in the universe, dark energy and dark matter,
energy, right.
and you're telling me the Big Bang is it, that's the answer, right?
You'll excuse me if I'm skeptical,
Oh, I should have cut that a long time ago.
Oh, man.
See, but I wanted to flesh out a couple of those different ideas. He talked about karma. He talked about thought as a
I think
creator.
I just developed like a eye twitch looking at this.
And everything is unsubstantiated, but he wants substantiated evidence for proving his ideas about the New Age. Basically.
No, dude, the burden of proof is on this guy. Why is the burden of proof on us? Oh man. Oh man, that was bad.
So it would be really interesting to actually go read those reports, because this actually happened a few years ago.
Yeah.
This thing. He has the reports out on there right now, and they can be absolutely disassembled. Disassembled, is that the word that they use when they try to take apart every piece of normal truth that we understand as truth? Disassemble.
Deconstruct.
Deconstruct. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, but I have a funny feeling that this is going to be pretty easy to deconstruct. But
I got a real good chuckle when he was like, "So wait, you can't quote the Bible even from like a historic, because it is a historic book, whether you like it or not. It's a book that was written in history, okay?" And just like, breaking his neck is like, oh, well. So the problem with that, like, oh man, I mean, that's the same sentiment I hear a lot in the New Age too, from people. It's like, yeah, we're going to have a religious, meeting where all the world's leaders are going to come together, and we're going to talk about humanity and love and light, and we're going to all read from all the different books of. What about the Bible? Well, so the only problem with that, it's like, come on.
Yeah, and what he says next about spirituality, it just blew my mind. He says that technology is climbing, but spirituality is not. Now, the reason why I think that's interesting, we're going to play that clip in a second, is because spirituality will appear to be climbing in the near future, but it's going to be a demonic manifestation that's going to happen. That's when all of a sudden people are like, I have ascended to a new realm and I have special abilities now. I can fly. I can do all these little things, and who knows what else is physics.
I can fly.
I'm Peter Pan.
Yep, exactly.
But anyway, watch this real quick. This will be a shorter clip.
If you believe the human mind even has the capacity to understand some of these concepts, or were we designed without having that capability, or were we designed? All those things seem to come to bear on this issue. If there is a greater God, or if there is a greater force in the universe, a higher power, whatever you want to call it, did they give us the ability to actually discern these things? Or were we meant to discern them?
Well, is there an intersection between human spirituality, the growth of human spirituality and our technological achievements. And there isn't. It's not even close. The human spirituality evolution is practically flatlined. The 20th century was the most dynamic killing century in the history of mankind in terms of number of people, that died because of wars and so forth. So the evidence isn't huge that spirituality is climbing. Yet our technological achievement is vertical, and it's segmented because it's jumping. It's going so fast, it's jumping. So now, if those two lines never intersect, is that a good or a bad thing?
So what do you see what he's saying there?
Yeah, but I've got conflicting thoughts about that. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think what's interesting is that he's fascinated by the idea that our technology is climbing and it's getting better, but our spirituality isn't. And so we need to
That's
figure out.
because you don't go to church, sir. Because you ain't in church. If you get to church and you have a relationship with Jesus, your spirituality would be climbing. Okay.
It's his worldview. It's the idea that he's our spirituality needs to progress. We need to get closer so we can have those abilities, those things, those amazing nirvana. I don't know what the New Age believes in is the next.
The feels, yeah. Well, they feel like the next thing is humanity becoming God. That's just is the New Age. That is the age of Aquarius, they say.
That's what he was saying then. When he was like he was saying our mind is a creator. That's what he was saying is that humans can be God and they can do all these things. They can move objects and be kind of telekinesis and all this.
Yeah, that's what they feel like the next stage in human evolution is, and that's what the New Age is waiting for. The only problem I have with that is there's nothing to me that says technology, the way that we have it, is like more advanced than what God's ideal was for humanity. For all we know, we could be going backwards, and we think like, maybe it would not have been advantageous for Adam and Eve to have cell phones, right? Like why, or to go to space? Like why would they even need that? Or the ancient worlds and ancient civilizations would have looked at cars and been like you do know that camels and horses are much more sustainable, and we're trying to figure out the sustainable problem of our Earth because we have cars, right? Like, so there's nothing that tells me personally that like, okay, while we have all these gadgets and trinkets and we're solving these different problems, we also have a lot of problems still that we haven't solved, and we know that because there's like he was saying, I agree that there does seem to be like horrific crimes that have been committed in the last couple of 100 years. And that's a problem. But what I see is spirituality is on a decline in this generation, especially the knowledge of God and Christianity and the Bible. And what happens in a culture where we are pushing atheism, we're pushing evolution, which he talks about, and we're pushing especially communism. Those three things create a recipe for a disaster, a culture for absolute chaos. And we should be encouraging more people to have a relationship with the creator of the universe that is spiritually and technologically advanced. I mean, so yeah, I mean, look, don't get me wrong, Brad. You know me, I'm a gadget guy. I love my technology. I love, but I don't, see that is a sign that man is progressing. And as far as spiritual progression, no, I don't see it flatlining. We see people walking away from the church. We see data that shows that people are choosing, they're going towards paths of new age spirituality, but that is self-centered worship, and it accommodates those people who are atheists if they want to have a more like supernatural or paranormal experience. But yeah, man, this guy.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And so we talked a little bit about technology. This is where it gets into a different interview. This last interview with him, and he's going to talk about ASAP.
Yeah.
This is probably the little bit different topic. We're going to leave spirituality alone for a second, and we're going to find out what really happened with this guy. Let's find out.
New York Times breaks this story out in December of 2017. It explodes. It's a tremendously important story. It changes the UFO landscape forever, but it gets some things not quite right. You've been on the sidelines watching all the reactions to this for the last 3 years. They report a program called ATIP, headed for a long time by Lou Elizondo, who got $22 million to study UFOs. And the reality is the $22 million was what went to you and OSAP to study much broader subjects than UFOs. And you did interact with Lou Elizondo back and forth, and the ATIP folks. But you were the big program. That was what was left over, right? Is that right?
Yeah, we were the primary program, and our program manager is of a completely different name, who ran our program. The great guy. This is the one I said earlier. I'm, it's wonderful that people like him work for our government, because he's a terrific guy. And I met Lou a couple times. Didn't really. He didn't play a role in our program in any way in terms of who we ever reported to or whoever we discussed kind of things with, and our program manager was very fundamental and key.
Since that story came out, as I said, I mean, the UFO world is turned upside down. You have a much broader audience that seems to be focused on it. These senators and congressmen who would never talk about this in a million years are now willing to come out and say this is worth studying. It is a sea change, but it's largely because of the work you guys did.
With the Tic Tac off the coast of San Diego, the event in 2004, we just serendipitously happened to hire on our team in 2008 one of the pilots of the group that saw the Tic Tac underwater, the churning of all the water and underwater, and then as it came out of the water, and so we got a firsthand briefing on something that we probably shouldn't have had, because it should have been totally classified, but it wasn't. It wasn't even acknowledged, In fact,
it was ignored, right?
It was ignored. It was completely ignored, and the FLIR videos were put in drawers in places that subsequently a friend of yours and mine, who up until just very recently ran the whole program for the United States, right, of things off the East Coast and West Coast and so forth, and he just ran it, and so he is the best qualified person to run this program the United States has.
I'm gonna pause it there. I think that's amazing news. That what he's trying to say there is basically, yeah, I'm in bed with the government, and they're giving me $22 million in tax money to understand what the paranormal is going on at Skinwalker Ranch and all this other stuff that he had purchased for a while. There's actually 4 more clips and about 15 more minutes of video. I just don't have time to do it, but we're gonna put that in the Discord, and we want to make that available to you. These last clips are, he talks about how we've found that there is, it looks as if there's deliberate attempt to make it look like there is debris from craft all over the world that different governments have found. Quote, I'm using my finger quotes. We'll see if that's actually real or if that's just people thinking they have, or maybe it's deliberate deception. We don't know yet. He also talks about how he's learned stuff from his OSAP paranormal escapade at the Skinwalker Ranch, and finally the strange occurrences that he thinks are supernatural. Obviously, we're looking into that because we think that this whole thing is going to be a deception one day, and we want to know exactly what's going on and put the pieces together before that, so we can alert everyone to what's happening. Do you have any final comments, Aaron?
No, nothing other than I think it's strange that the narrative for the last 100 years or however many years it has been pushed by the secular world. God doesn't exist. We evolved. We came from monkeys. Spirituality isn't this thing, isn't what you think it is. And here the government is talking to spirits. It's like the whole cover up is that, the the spiritual realm is real. These spiritual beings are real. Why a government would want the populace not to understand that seems to be for means of control, because if they can get you to think that spirituality isn't a thing, well, then they can go in and they can be God for you. They can be God to you. And when they come out one day and say, hey, by the way, here's the narrative, here's the truth of spirituality and reality. Again, that's my conviction that that's when we've gotten into church state, no longer separate, where the state has an authority on the spiritual matters, and where the spiritual world merges and joins hands with the state and with the government. And I just think that that's we're headed down a very dangerous path and a slippery slope into being subjected possibly to a very oppressive and tyrannical church religious government system. And that sounds crazy. So
that does sound crazy. And I think what we're going to see is exactly that. If you tell the government, hey, find out what these things are for me, find out what these spirits are, or whatever it's going on here. And now you got the government defining what is spiritualism. Well, you've given the keys over to the government to be your church and be your state.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you just said. I know I'm reiterating it, but just so people are completely clear, this is church state right there, and you won't even realize it.
And good point. Have you noticed the Vatican's flag, by the way, why there are 2 keys on there? Well, that goes back to the keys that were given, it was to Peter, to have for heaven and earth. Whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatever you shall loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. So they take that to say that now the Pope, the papal system, has the keys to heaven and earth. They believe they have the truth and the totality of how those things interact and connect. And someday, where this is leading, in my opinion, is the government that says, hey, not only do we have the keys to planet Earth, but now we have the keys to the celestial world, and we're going to tell you how that operates. So that's a church state for you, man.
Wow. Man, oh man, we're going to be in for it, man. And so let's have a little prayer before we go. You said it for pre-show, but if anybody wants to be involved in the pre-show, and if you want to see these last 4 clips that we're going to talk about, join us on Patreon, patreon.com/strangenormal, and become a part of our Patreon. Become part of our Discord server through Patreon, and you can too interact with us 24/7, find out what's going on before the show starts, and also be up to date on the stuff we don't talk about, because we don't get everything going here. Not only these last 4 clips, but a lot of other stuff that wasn't included that people find all throughout the week. Anyways, let's have a little prayer, and let's wish you all farewell. Father God, thank you so much for giving us today that we can go over all these interesting things that are happening in your world, so we can be prepared and we cannot be surprised by the final outcome that's going to be coming down the road, that we can know the full truth and nothing but the truth, the things that you found that you've given to us in the Bible. We love you, God. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Aaron, until next time.
All righty. See you, Brad. Thanks for having me.
See you, everyone. Bye.
See you. Bye.